Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive straight into the hidden code of how AI actually writes, and more importantly, what it means for your development as a university student. Now, if you've ever stared at a blinking cursor at 2 a.m. and thought, you know what, I'm just going to outsource this to a chatbot, well, you are definitely not alone. But today we're looking at a massive linguistic analysis that directly compares how university students write versus how AI writes. And what we find here, it might just completely change how you view your entire educational journey.
So let's start with a question you've probably asked yourself right before a major deadline. Does ChatGPT actually write better than you do? I mean, it certainly feels like it sometimes, right? It spits out these massive, complex words and flawless grammar in literal seconds. But here's the thing. Better is a really tricky word in academia. To figure out if it's actually producing high-quality academic prose or if it's just an impressive optical illusion, we have to look closely at the hard data.
To answer that, we're going to logically break this down into 6 quick stages: the AI writing illusion, measuring academic style, a head-to-head of students versus ChatGPT, why AI feels dense but disconnected, the fluff factor, and finally, your own writing development.
Starting off with Section 1, the AI writing illusion. We are busting the myth of the perfect AI essay.
Look, there's this incredibly pervasive myth floating around campuses right now that ChatGPT writes perfect, highly sophisticated academic papers. But the reality, it's way more nuanced. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon University actually surveyed 193 university students across different writing courses. And the data shows that while you and your peers are definitely curious about tools like ChatGPT and you want to learn how to use them, you also intuitively sense that it's not a magic bullet. Students actually disapproved of instructors just freely allowing AI for assignments and overwhelmingly agreed that there are specific situations where they choose not to use it. Basically, you already know on some level that an algorithm shouldn't replace your actual human voice.
Moving right along to Section 2, measuring academic style, or what we can call the linguistic measuring stick. To truly understand why AI isn't always the right move, we've got to look under the hood using a linguistic framework. Researchers measure writing along a few dimensions, but dimension 1 is absolutely crucial here. On one end of the scale, you have information density. This is writing that uses heavy, dense nouns to compress a ton of information into a tiny space. On the exact opposite end, you have involved production. This relies on conversational features, linguistic hedges like saying could or seems, and it actually engages the reader by inviting alternative perspectives. It's basically a tug-of-war between packing a sentence full of hard data versus having a dynamic, open conversation.
Now, as you progress through university, your normal academic development is all about learning to navigate this exact scale. When you first arrive on campus, your writing is naturally super conversational and involved. But as you progress, you learn to balance those two sides. You learn how to make your writing more concise and informationally dense, but without losing that human connection or your ability to juggle different perspectives.
Which brings us perfectly into Section 3, students versus ChatGPT. Let's look at the Dimension 1 divide. Okay, this is where things get really fascinating. When researchers mapped student writing directly against ChatGPT on this Dimension 1 scale, a massive gap appeared. At the very top, you've got first-year student writing. Highly involved, interactive, conversational. Move down toward the middle, and you'll find upper-level students and published professional academics sitting perfectly balanced. But then, plunge all the way down to the absolute bottom of the chart, and there's ChatGPT. It is an extreme, rigid outlier in pure information density. It is nowhere near human professional writing. To put that into perspective with some actual numbers, when generating proposals, ChatGPT is nearly twice as informationally dense as its own research introductions, and it's an astonishing 6 times denser than professional human texts. Let that sink in. 6 times! The main takeaway here is that ChatGPT isn't writing like some brilliant professional academic, it's aggressively over-indexing on information density to an unnatural, almost robotic extreme. Let's move into Section 4, dense but disconnected. Here's the core problem with AI's statistical output.
Lead researcher Ben Markey and his colleagues discovered that this extreme density comes with a really heavy cost. Because ChatGPT crams so many nouns and modifiers together without ever inviting alternative perspectives, the text becomes completely dialogically closed. It's a one-way street. In fact, readers describe the text as feeling empty and fluffy. It's a bizarre paradox, right? The text is mathematically packed full of information, yet somehow it feels like it's saying absolutely nothing at all. So why does it feel so hollow? Mostly because ChatGPT completely avoids those linguistic hedges we talked about. Words like could, seems, or slightly. Human scholars use those words to be diplomatic and open to debate, but instead of genuinely engaging with ideas, ChatGPT acts like a rigid algorithm. It relies on totally fixed sentence structures and essentially just plays a giant game of Mad Libs, plugging complex nouns into a repetitive formula. It's totally faking the aesthetic of academic writing without doing any of the actual academic thinking.
Section 5, the fluff factor. Time to translate some serious linguistic jargon. Post-nominal prepositional modification.
In the linguistic world, that fluff factor is called post-nominal prepositional modification. But when you compare human writing and ChatGPT side by side, the difference is obvious in plain English. It's that exact feeling you get when you read a paragraph that uses 20 massive words to completely dodge making a point. See, human writers constantly anchor their abstract ideas with concrete examples, like explicitly saying less than 95% vaccine uptake. ChatGPT, on the other hand, confidently strings together abstract jargon like comprehensive green mobility initiatives without ever bothering to explain what on earth that actually means.
This boils down to understanding the true goal of writing versus the AI shortcut. When you write an essay, your goal is to pull the reader closer to your complex ideas by giving them clear, pedestrian examples they can easily grasp. But ChatGPT takes a mathematical shortcut. Its heavy, noun-stuffed structure literally stops it from generating those everyday examples. It pushes the reader away, which is exactly why the whole thing reads as totally empty.
Finally, Section 6, your writing development, and the hidden danger of taking this cognitive shortcut.
Let's look at your natural evolution as a writer. In year 1, you rely heavily on generalities and highly involved text. By years 2 and 3, you're doing the really hard mental heavy lifting, learning to use hedges to balance alternate perspectives and negotiate with your reader. And by graduation, you've developed the cognitive ability to synthesize complex info into concise, communicative prose. This whole journey isn't just about learning where to put a comma, it's about developing critical habits of mind.
And here is the real danger. When you outsource this process to ChatGPT, you aren't just generating a fluffy paper to meet a deadline. You are actively short-circuiting your own brain's development. You're bypassing the exact cognitive struggle you need to learn how to think critically and abstractly. Worse, by mimicking AI, you are forcing your own writing into a rigid, robotic, stylistic corner that actual professional academics actively try to avoid.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question. Next time you're about to hit submit on an assignment, ask yourself, do you want to sound like a rigid algorithm that just blindly madlibs nouns into a mathematical formula? Or do you want to grow into a true scholar who actually knows how to engage with ideas and connect with another human being? The tool might be incredibly fast, but the cognitive journey, that is entirely yours to take.